It is Monday, May 6th, and the Splash Zone is back in your life. I'm Matt Modi after a couple of days off, and I have four NBA bangers for you guys to lock in for tonight's NBA betting slate. So I'm actually going to have three player props and one mainline play for today. I rarely have mainline plays, but for today, there is one that I really like. Of course, before we can get into today's picks, we got to do a recap, not just from yesterday, but from the entire time that I was gone. And it was a pretty good time away. I was still able to give out a couple bangers a day. And we had some success in the days that I was gone. So since the last time you saw me, my picks went 9-5, up about 3.5 units in that stretch as well, which is very, very good. It was nice to have a pronounced couple days where we had success, because if you remember last week, we had a brutal 4-day stretch. Seems as though we were able to put that behind us. Again, had a really good run in the time that I was off. That brings our entire profit on the entire season. We are up about 111 units. And then if you look at the playoffs specifically, we're up just over the 3-unit mark. So it hasn't been an amazing playoffs, admittedly, right through the first round, up exactly barely over 3 units. Isn't terrible. I'm happy to be in the profit, but it's not as good as we were in the regular season. So let's hope that we can use the success that we had to end the first round and project that into the second round as well. If you are not already, I would appreciate it if you could like the video, comment, subscribe. All that good stuff does help me out a ton. And then the last thing that I'll mention before I get into my bangers is that I do have a Dub Club. So it's where I send everything out for only $5 a month. The plays that you get on Dub Club, they are the same exact plays that I give out for free on YouTube and on Twitter. I just send them out early. So a lot of times the odds that you see on the YouTube video are no longer currently able to be offered by the time you're actually logging them in. Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about that. By the time I record a video, edit it, and then post it, the odds change. So I came out with the Dub Club as a way to combat that. As soon as I decide what a play is, the very first thing I do is send it out to Dub Club. So if you want to pay the $5 to get everything texted to you, you can. If not, you can get everything for free on YouTube and on Twitter. I just like to give people the option. But that's enough of that. Let's see if we can splash around and continue to get wet today after a nice couple days off. First up, we're just going to go in the first game, then to the second game. So the first game is the Pacers versus Knicks game, and I am taking Dante DiVincenzo under 15.5 points, minus 102 odds at FanDuel. So DiVincenzo had an awesome game 6 in the closeout game for the Knicks, where they beat the Sixers in 6 games. He was amazing in game 6, but overall, I mean, it's only been a 6-game sample size, but he was not great that entire series. He was not like Josh Hart. Obviously not like Jalen Brunson, but Jalen Brunson's a superstar, so it's not a fair comparison. But it wasn't as though he showed up in every single game. And for this matchup specifically, as we move on to the Pacers, I do not think this is going to be the matchup for Dante DiVincenzo where he's going to have a good series. Now, we'll get into that in a little bit, but the first thing I want to do is just talk to you about the series against the Sixers and how that went. So in that 6-game series, DiVincenzo went over this number twice, scoring 19 points in game 2. 23 points in game 6. Those are the 2 games that he went over. And then if you look at the 4 games in which he went under, he literally scored fewer than 10 points in all 4 games he went under. So the 2 games he went over, 19 and 23. The 4 games he went under, didn't even get to 10 points. Now that does make a little bit of sense with a player that majority of their points come from 3-pointers. If you're off from 3, you're not going to score a lot of points. So it makes sense that, he had the high of 23 and then the low of below 10 in the other 4 games. But the thing that concerned me was that his minutes in that series were hit or miss as well. Basically, the way that Tibbs had it with DiVincenzo, if he was making his shots, he would get playing time. If he was missing his shots, he would not. If you look at the 2 games that he went over, his point total, he played 37 in all 48 minutes in those 2 games. Looking at the other 4 games of the series, and now one of these was due to foul trouble, but still, not the other 3. If you look at the 4 games in which he went under, he played 24 and a half, 28, 28, and 26 minutes. So the risk with him is that if his shots aren't falling, he's just not going to see the court. And that's not the case with every single player. There are some players who will continue to get playing time even if they're not shooting well. We'll talk about actually one of those similar players in the other series, the Nuggets Timberwolves. But that's not the case with DiVincenzo. So not only do we have to hope that he has a good shooting game, because then if he doesn't, he's just not going to play. So there's kind of like a double risk betting the over for DiVincenzo. And as I mentioned, this is not the type of matchup where I expect DiVincenzo to score a lot of points. I don't think he's going to get up a bunch of shots. I just don't think he's going to be shooting a lot in general, right? the majority of the points that DiVincenzo scores, he's a catch and shoot guy, right? He scores from spot up opportunities and he scores from catch and shoot 3-pointers. That's how he scores. The Pacers do not give up any spot up, any catch and shoot 3-point opportunities. That's the style of their defense. They will stick to shooters. They'll let themselves get beat pretty easily one-on-one. They'll let themselves get beat time and time again at the rim, but they don't give up any jump shots. They will stick to shooters. If you look at the entire season, they literally allowed the fewest points per game to spot up opportunities, and they allowed the fewest catch and shoot 3-pointers as well. Those are the two main areas of the court where Donte DiVincenzo scores. Maybe over the course of the series, the Pacers will mix up their matchups and mix up how they play defense. In game one, they're probably just going to go with what they did in the regular season. And I don't think that's going to be something that's going to lead to a bunch of points for Donte DiVincenzo. So his under as my first play, I really like. Next up, same game, another under, same team. Jalen Brunson under 8.5 assists, plus 114 odds at DraftKings. This is a somewhat correlated bet, but it's not as though if one hits, the other one has to hit. And then the other side, if one misses, the other one has to miss, right? Brunson went over in games, his assist number, in which DiVincenzo went under. So they're a little correlated, but they're still separate enough that I'm obviously not scared off playing both of them. But I really, really like this play for Brunson to go over his assist number. And I think the price that I was able to get it at, plus 114, this is what I was sent out to my Dub Club, is a phenomenal price. Very similar to this not being a matchup where DiVincenzo is going to make a lot of 3-pointers. This is also not a matchup where I see Jalen Brunson being able to get a bunch of assists either. And I think we're getting a really, really good price on this because of how the series ended, the Sixers series for the Knicks. Brunson was amazing to end the series from a playmaking perspective. He went over this number in 3 of the last 4 games. He actually got double-digit assists in all of those games. He went over as well. But against the Pacers, completely different matchup from the Sixers. And I'm actually happy that Brunson did so well in the playmaking department against the Sixers because it means we're getting an awesome value taking his under against the Pacers. And this is just not a series where I expect Brunson to have a lot of assists. As I mentioned, the Pacers will stick to shooters so that they don't give up a lot of spot up or a lot of catch and shoot opportunities. All of those shots, if they go in, are assisted. So you take away the spot up, the catch and shoot 3-point opportunity. That's one avenue where I do not project Brunson to get a ton of assists. But in general, the way the Pacers, their style of defense, the way they play, is they will allow themselves to get cooked one-on-one. They'll allow pick and roll ball handlers, isolation scorers, will just score at will repeatedly against the Pacers, but they don't send double teams. They don't send help. So they don't give up a lot of points to other facets of the court, facets of the court, other facets of the game. That's why when Dame was healthy, we saw him go off in single coverage against the Pacers. Dame only went over his assist number in one of the games, and that was a fluky. He had an 8-minute stretch where he got 6 of his 7 assists, and his over-under was 6.5. The majority of the game, he was not getting a lot of assists. What the Pacers do is they give up a lot of points to high-usage players like Jalen Brunson, but not a lot of assists. And to back that up with stats, the Pacers literally gave up the most points per game in the entire NBA to pick-and-roll ball handlers and to isolation scorers. Generally, when those players are scoring points, they're not also assisting. You can't score and get an assist on the same exact play. That's just how it works. So because of that, the Pacers gave up literally the fewest number of assists per game to point guards in the entire NBA this past regular season. And if you specifically look at where Jalen Brunson gets assists, they gave up the 6th fewest assists to Jalen Brunson's playmaking style, specifically per courtside pal. So all in all, not a series where I expect Brunson to get a bunch of assists. I love getting his under 8.5, especially getting it for plus money. I think it's an awesome play. Next up, Timberwolves versus Nuggets game. I'm taking the Nuggets spread minus 5.5, minus 109 odds at BetRivers, and you can get it at minus 110 basically everywhere else. This is a two-pronged approach. Backing the Nuggets at home after losing game 1, the defending champs who I think are going to win the championship again this year. But this is also essentially a system play. If the team that is the favorite to win the series at home loses game 1, they win and cover game 2 at an absolutely ridiculous rate. There was a stretch in last year's playoffs where 15 straight home teams that lost game 1 won game 2. Now that streak was broken when the Heat took a 3-0 lead against the Celtics. Obviously they were the road team. Heading into that, like 15 or 16 straight home teams had won. And the majority of times they win, they cover. 70% of the time, heading into this year's playoffs. And we hadn't had an example of this. Every single home team won game one. We didn't have an example, but 70% of the time that the team that lost game one at home won game two, they covered, right? And just look at this, how the last year's playoffs went. We actually had a lot of examples of this in last year's playoffs, and it was an absolute goldmine. Now, I understand that none of those series has anything to do with this specific matchup on the Timberwolves versus Nuggets. But as I said, we're backing the Nuggets at home, where they historically play significantly better. They're the defending champs, and they just lost game one. I think they're going to come out and show up in game two. And just look at how all these series went last year, which again, I just wanted to preface it saying I understand those series are different. We have enough of a sample size of this system. So I'm just going to go series by series. Last year, Clippers, Suns were the home team. They lost game one. They came out and won game two by 14 in a game in which they were 7.5 point spreads. Also in the Western Conference, the Lakers came in and won game one in Memphis. They actually had the Lakers as favorites heading into game two, despite the fact that they were the away team and the 7 seed. Memphis, they were underdogs in game two, but they came out and won game two by 10 points in a game, again, where the Lakers were actually favored. And then if we go to the Eastern Conference, there were 2 examples where the road underdog heading into the series won the series in 5 games. Guess what game the home teams won? It was game 2 after they lost game 1. The Cavs didn't even show up the entire series. They won game 2 by 17. The Bucks, who were the heavy favorites, won game 2 by 16, and Giannis didn't even play in that game 2, if you remember. And then we look in the next round, the semifinals of each conference. The Sixers beat the Celtics in game 1 without Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid returned in game 2. The Sixers lost by 34. Then we go to the Knicks Heat in that same semifinals. That was the only game that was even close of all these games I'm talking about. The Knicks lost game 1 at home to the Heat. They won game 2 by 6, and they were 5.5 point favorites. So they would have won that just by the hook. That still counts. And then the last example of this in last year's playoffs, where the home team won game 2. Lakers, Warriors. The Warriors were the home team in game 1. They lost. They came out and won game 2 by 27 points. So a lot of times these game 2s aren't even close. And some of those series were close, right? Sixers, Celtics went 7 games. Some of those series, in the Lakers, Grizzlies went 6, Lakers, Warriors went 6. Some of those series were actually kind of close, and the team just came out and dominated game 2 after losing game 1 at home. That's what I kind of expect to happen in game 2. I don't necessarily think it's going to be like a 34-point drubbing, but I do think it's going to be a game that the Nuggets are able to come out and win pretty comfortably at home. Anthony Edwards is amazing. He may not be able to put up 40 burgers every single game, and the Nuggets just have a lot of avenues to victory. So I like them to bounce back, and there's a lot of data points that that are in favor of that happening as well. And then our last play, 4th and final pick, play a prop for this game, Jaden McDaniels, over 12.5 points plus rebounds, minus 125 odds at bet365. So despite the fact that I am on the Nuggets to win generally pretty comfortably, I do like this play for Jaden McDaniels, who's obviously a member of the Timberwolves. I like this play quite a lot. So he went under in game 1, but he had 8 rebounds. So you're going to say, okay, if his points plus rebounds is 12.5 and he had 8 rebounds, that means he didn't score a lot. That's underselling it. He literally scored 0 points in game 1. Legitimately 0. 0 of 7 from the field. Last I checked, that's pretty bad. But the good news is he's such an important player for the Timberwolves defense that there's no Dante DiVincenzo risk here. He is going to play regardless of if he scores or not. We literally just saw that happen. He scored 0 points in game 1. He still played over 39 minutes because his defense is transcended. One of the best defenders that you'll see in a team that has an amazing defense. So as long as he doesn't get hurt, and as long as this game is relatively close, like they're not going to pull him if they're down by 10. They're going to pull him if they're down by 40. I'm not expecting that. He's going to play another 39 plus 40 plus minutes because his defense is so valuable. And this is a perfect fade of recent results. And we've seen McDaniels both play well in the playoffs. He was great in the Sun series. And he's played well against the Nuggets as well. So I'm not really scared off either of the playoffs or of this matchup either. He went over this number in 3 of 4 games against the Suns. The one game he missed came after a game in which he scored 25 points. So it makes sense that he was going to take a little bit of a step back after that. And then in the regular season, he cashed this in 3 of 4 games against the Timberwolves, on the Timberwolves against the Nuggets as well. He missed it in the very last game these two teams played, but he cashed it in the first 3, so it's cashed in 3 of 5 games overall against the Nuggets. And if you look at these 5 games, he's averaging over 5.5 rebounds on just about 9 rebound opportunities per game. And in game 1, he had 8 rebounds on 14 rebound opportunities. Now, that number's a little bit high, but his over-under is 3.5, so we said we should project him for 3-4 rebounds. That's the expectation for this one. And then from a points perspective, I kind of like him as a ladder play for his points. I wouldn't be surprised if he really just, I mean, his main line over-under is 8.5. I won't be surprised if he scored 10, 15 points in this game. I like combining the points plus rebounds because it's a little bit safer, but I do think that he has blow-up potential from a points perspective. In the regular season, he averaged 14.5 points per game against the Nuggets. He scored 6 in the first game, so that one he went under. And then he scored 26, 17, and 9 points, going over his main line over-under of 8.5. And then 2 of those games, he would have cleared this number with points alone, with those 26 and 17 points. So he's got a pretty good ceiling as well. And if you just look at the 5 games, which it does include the one game where he literally scored 0 points, he's still averaging 11.5 points per game against the Nuggets. I absolutely love this play. I think it's a really good one. And that's all we got. 4 bangers for you guys to lock in. Very long episode, which I apologize for. I just really liked these plays. Make sure to like the video. Make sure to comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Check out my Dub Club if you're interested. Appreciate everybody for watching, and have a good one.